everybody. We've just a small group this evening for our presentation this evening by my colleague in the National Museum, Noel Campbell. He is curator of the, amongst other things, the traditional boat collection. And you're in for a treat this evening because Noel's going to tell us all about his research and the work that he is doing to develop a brand new gallery in Turlough Park House. So Noel, welcome, and I'm going to hand straight over to you.
Good, Anya. Thanks, Lorna, and thanks for inviting me. It's exactly the type of group that I've been feeding off for the last while online, and I'll talk a bit more about how iCAN can continue to help the research we're doing into the boat gallery. I might just start by sharing the screens here. Now, hopefully you're seeing the first screen there, E?
Yep.
Great. So what I want to talk about this evening is a new gallery, a permanent gallery we're developing in the National Museum out in Turlough Park. It's going to be it's a gallery of traditional Irish boats and associated materials from the West Coast. And the reason we picked the West Coast is because that's where the strength of our collection, our boat collection, is. We have just over 30 boats from around the country, freshwater and maritime. And the majority of them, half of them would be curraghs, we'll say, from the West Coast. But we also have larger boats as well, Galway hooker, for instance, and bigger curraghs and punts as well from the West Coast. So for the purpose of the gallery, because it is a finite space in Turlough Park, we have decided to concentrate on the West Coast, where the strength of our own collection is. Well, the title, I suppose, of this talk is Wild Atlantic Voices, because the reason I chose that is because although the gallery is going to be concentrating on boats and model boats made by boat builders, etc., they're really vehicles for telling the story about those boat builders and their families and their communities and how those boats impacted on their various regions and localities up and down the West Coast, in our coastal communities and on our islands, some that are still inhabited and others that aren't. So today I want to talk on one hand about the works of developing, the actual practicalities of developing a gallery of boats, and also I want to talk about the engagement we've started back in 2019. The engagement we're still undertaking with communities. There's a saying, nothing about us without us. In other words, you can't develop a gallery really to standard. You know, you can't talk on somebody else's behalf. So really you need to go out to those areas, out to those communities, as you're all doing yourself, to get those stories to make the gallery as strong as possible. I'm sure you're probably all familiar with the museum and where it is at this stage. I'm trying to click on here. Give me 1 second now. It's not moving, is it, guys?
It's not, though. It's not moving on.
Sorry, it should be now. Now, I'm not going to
Perfect.
go into the very basics of the museum. I presume you're all familiar enough with who the National Museum of Ireland Country Life is and where we're located in Mayo. A positive aspect of the Mayo location is that we are only about 25 minutes from the sea, and it's a county itself that's rich in maritime history, and there are great whatever stories I can pick up easily enough by driving to our own coast. It's a story really that's often replicated up and down the West Coast, and I'll go through some of those personal stories in a moment as well. So obviously this is our own gallery space as well. You've got the Victorian house up at the top from 1865 and our purpose-built galleries. So between those two buildings, and I thought I had an image of it here. Here it is. Between those two buildings, the modern gallery building and the Victorian house, there's a building that we call the Link building. And you're looking at it here. Currently in there, we have about half of our curragh collection stored, but that building was always meant to be a gallery for those boats. You can see yourself on the left. There's a walkway there for the public. There's a railing, and then the display area there for the boats. We opened in 2001, and this gallery never, it wasn't opened at the time. I'm presuming it was down to money, but the ambition now is to get that open by 2026. So the project, while my predecessor, Dr. Seamus McPhillip, would have worked on increasing the amount of boats we have in the collection, and he did great work on it. Many of the boats he collected were built by boat builders that are since gone. So we really have some gems in the collection. But he never got to see the gallery progressed. But in 2009, we put in a proposal to our management in Dublin that we would open this permanently and it would be funded, and my time would be set aside to getting it open. So that's the work we've been doing since 2009 or 2019, sorry. So as I said, the collection, the Irish Folklife collection, contains over 30 traditional Irish boats. The currachs are the currachs, which are the simple wooden framed waterproof skin boats that you see upturned in this picture. They're well represented. Some of them are over 100 years old, and they will be displayed in the gallery as well. There's some fantastic hide covered currachs from Donegal, which are a particularly kind of primitive type of currach. They'll be on display. Over the centuries, the physical form of traditional Irish maritime vessels were shaped by local necessity and foreign influences. The waters off Ireland's Atlantic coast were utilised for fishing and to transport people and cargo, such as turf and seaweed, in a time when coastal areas were not easily accessed by land. So there's a real importance for, I think, to a lot of extent, Ireland's concentrated on its kind of farming background and the importance of farming, and we've lost touch with how important the sea was and how important our maritime heritage is. The working boats evolved to suit their purpose, and in doing so, they reflected the story of the lives of the populations they served. And in this gallery, that's exactly what we're trying to get across, the impact these boats had on the people. So, there'll be you could concentrate very heavily on the kind of the aesthetics of the boat and how they measure up and what materials were used in them. Was it white deal? Was it oak, etc., etc. But being a folklife museum, we're very much concentrated on the impact these boats had on communities. The role and the importance of the Atlantic Ocean and the lives of those living by its waters were recorded in a strong oral tradition that was later collected in printed works of the Irish speakers such as Tomás O'Crohon and Peg Sears, Seamus MacAnimeragh and Mirsha Suloan as well, all famous famous writers from the West Coast. The National Museum too sought to record this fading way of life from the beginning of the Free State, I suppose, on. The tangible remnants of the relationships between island and coastal communities and the sea are safeguarded in the Museum of Country Life's collection, and that's the collection I'm now trying to get out to the public. We have about we have three boats actually on display in the permanent gallery in Turlough Park, but we have one of the best collections in the country, and it's only right that it gets a good public permanent showing as well. So I suppose to achieve the gallery and to develop it a number of years ago, I set about visiting people and organisations along the West Coast in order to record their stories, as I was saying. COVID came along and I was housed. We were all housed. So it kind of knocked a good year and a half out of the engagement we had going on with communities. And it's a collaboration, really, because every time I meet somebody on my fieldwork, I make it very clear that, listen, we'd love these stories, your story, to be used in the gallery, on our panels, on our interactives, etc. So it's not going to be me explaining to people what the West Coast life was like. It'll be people themselves. We go to the next slide here. So I'd like to just go through briefly some of the research that was carried out, firstly by Seamus McPhillip, my predecessor, and then myself as well. So beginning geographically, I suppose, in the north, we'll be working from Donegal down to Cork. Seamus visited this beautiful area in County Donegal called Bunbeg. It's a small town in an Irish-speaking area, and Seamus was an Irish speaker himself, which was a great help. And he made some valuable recordings in that language with fishermen and boat builders in Donegal. One of the fishermen he spoke to, Jim Boyd from Bunbeg, built a currach for the National Museum. And in this interview you're about to hear, Jim talks to Seamus about his time building currachs for many years.
No, well, we're not hearing anything. Is it playing on your side?
It is. Oh dear.
Wonder why that is.
Share sound. Hold on now. Wait now. We'll go back one here.
And what year was that approximately?
Now we'll try it again.
I built my first curragh when I was about 17.
Can you hear anything, folks?
Yeah.
And my father didn't want me to build a curragh at all because he said I would build something that it would drown myself in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd more or less built it announced to him.
Yeah.
And anyway, it turned out all right, and the curragh was good enough. So from then on, I've been building curraghs off and on ever since.
And what year was that approximately, Jim?
That was back in 55.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many would you say you have built approximately since then?
Oh, now it'd be hard to say. I would say 100 anyway or more.
Really?
100, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you're doing a couple a year?
Yeah, I'd be doing a couple of years now.
So that was Jim Boyd, and Jim is, I believe, no longer with us. The boat in this watercolor by Donald McPolin is a Bunbeg curragh, and these are the types of curraghs that Jim would have built himself. As he said, he's in the interview, he's made over 100 in his time. We're fortunate enough to have one of Jim's boats in the collection, and it looks exactly as you're looking at in the watercolor. It's a real find. Another well-known boat builder from Donegal was Jim McElhenney. He's pictured here fitting the frame of a Dunfanaghy curragh that he built from memory. Jim worked without plans, and he would have built boats himself. And always a little difference in them, but always you could tell it was Jim's boat. Where the builders of boats in our collections have passed on, we make efforts to contact their families who would often have taken part in the boat building themselves. Sometimes the families make contact with us, and that's what happened when the family of John McLafferty, where you see here in the cap in the curragh, visited the museum a number of years ago to share their memories with us. And a boat by their father was acquired by the museum in 1932. It's a fantastic boat. It looks exactly, and it could possibly be the one John is sitting in right there. Staying in Donegal, the previously mentioned artist Donald McPolin, and he's a very good boat historian as well. The Traditional Boats of Ireland book that was edited by Christopher McCarthy from UCD was co-edited by Donald here, the gent with the beard. And Donald, he's an absolute meticulous historian. He's a fantastic guy, and his artworks are, I think they're now up in Donegal County Archives, but he gave us a copy of them, which were fantastic to have. Accessing a network of historians, it's very important to not only get to meet the boat builders, the communities and the families themselves, but also the kind of the academics and the experts and the enthusiasts as well, because we aren't all born and bred by the sea, myself included. So it's a number of years ago, and I get to speak at a lot of these, including this as well, which is very useful as a Maritime Heritage Weekend in Sligo. A number of years back in what was it, 2022. It was a fantastic event, very useful to network with people from County Sligo, where I hadn't many contacts in the first place. They're all very passionate about the maritime history of Sligo as well. Some old friends of the museum were present in Ross's Point at that talk. The relatives of the famous McCann boat building family from Moneygold in County Sligo were there, and they recommitted themselves to giving us all of their assistance with the boat gallery. In 2014, yeah, 10 years ago, we acquired the contents of the McCann's boat yard in Moneygold. It was, here it is. This is what it was like when we got down into it. So two McCann brothers had passed on in the family. There was no one else building boats. So the family got on to the National Museum and gave us permission to acquire as much of the objects as we wanted. And Sligo County Archives got the paperwork and the records, the paper records. So this lovely punt in the middle of the image here, we acquired that as an example of the McCann's work. And that will be cleaned up and put on display as part of the gallery as well. The McCanns built boats for everyone from Donegal Bay right down to the North Mayo coast. So when you hear me saying Moneygall, County Sligo, they really worked far beyond those, far beyond that little area. Further south, going down the coast again, the pleasure of attending a regatta in Belderrig a couple of years back. It was a great event. The first boat here is they're both Belderrig currachs. They're big 5-man currach that were used up in North Mayo for salmon fishing. It was steered at the back. You can see the gent in the foreground there with the red shorts. He's actually using an oar at the back as a kind of like a rudder. The boat was so big you needed that. But that gent there is a man called Shane Holland. He's from a group called Currachie na Skerry in Dublin. He's got Mayo connections himself, but they're a currach rowing group and building group in Dublin that worked with us and plans that we hold in the museum to build Belderrig currach. And they brought it back up to the North Mayo coast from Dublin, from Skerries, to race the local men up in North Mayo. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic event. There hadn't been any regatta in that part of the country in decades, and I was fortunate enough on the day to talk to one of the guys who was involved in the original racing back in the 50s.
The currach fed people in Belderrig. In 1950, there were 50 men fishing in 10 currachs out of the year. It was my own obsession with it is that I realised early on how important economically it was to Belderrig, and that was really my fascination, my lifelong fascination.
So Brendan here in the picture of very obvious man. He's a great man up in the locality. But when he was born in 1936. He's still with us. Brendan got involved in the rejuvenation of the regattas in the early 50s. And as you say, it wasn't just a leisure craft at the time. As you heard him say, in the 50s, there were families and men still fishing and, trying to eke out a partial living from their fishing. They would have also been farmers and tradesmen as well. They would have done many jobs to try and create a bit of a living for them and their family. But it was great to have him there on the day. He actually set off the regatta with I don't think he warned anyone. He was sitting on the pier with a shotgun and let a shotgun off just to kick the regatta off. But a great character, and I have a lovely interview with him that I'll be adding into our gallery as well. He's actually written a great book on the Belderrig currach and the people Currach Dún Cuican agus a Wincher, which is the Belderrig currach and its people, and wrote that in 2010. And it's a great read. He's a great man, great source of history as well. And not far from Belderrig is a boat synonymous with Achill Island. It's the Achill Yawl, and while the boats no longer work, the annual Achill Yawl races, which are recorded in my next clip, see history come alive. It's a fantastic, when the weather is good and the Achill Yawls are racing, it's a great thing to see. And here's the next clip.
How many boats can you see? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry, it's rough footage. That was me standing on the shore there, just taken that on probably on my phone at the time, but it was just to give an example of, it was a very light wind that day, and if you could see them manoeuvring the boats with the simplest and lightest of winds, it was something to see. But as a result of my contacts down in Achill and attending regatta like this, a gentleman approached the museum and donated a sail from his grandfather's Achill yawl, original double-ended Achill yawl it's called. So the boat on the left there, the green, both endings would have been sharpened like that, not like the one behind it where you'd have a kind of square transom for a motor. That was a later introduction, but he donated the sail from there, from his family's original Achill yawl, which is a great thing to have. It's 100 years old, so a fine thing to get from him, and that was from contact with the community down there. Where communities gathered, of course, there's always a shared pride in one's place, and the regattas can get quite competitive, and it's really funny to see a day for the neighbourhood to show off itself. Regattas are always a good part of the summer calendar in these areas. Crinne na Mod, which is the gathering of the boats in Mayo, is one of those events where racing is enriched by friendship and storytelling, and I always love to get down to it. These are boats locally made as well. They're currachs which are adapted for racing. You can see how slender and kind of skinny they are. They're not working currachs. It's a new form of, I suppose, currach, but they're still built by the traditional currach builders, and to the same basic plan, a wooden frame and skin. Travelling further south, down the coast, down the Mayo coast, get to Clare Island. I had a great time out in Clare Island. Met 3 or 4 boat builders and fishermen in one day. Of course, the island, it's about 6 kilometers maybe from the mainland. And 2020, I went down, and one of my contacts down there was this gent here, Michael Gallagher, standing in a currach he built himself. He's also a builder of currachs, fisherman, fishes, checks his lobster pots about 2-3 times a day out there. But he invited me up to his house, very nice man, and we talked. Yeah, we had a good talk for an hour or so and a half. His story was a common story from the west of Ireland. It's one of emigration and return. He was in England, he came back, decline of one's home, and struggled to encourage the youth to remain. He had actually built a currach for his own son a number of years ago, but to try and encourage him to fish as he had himself. But sadly, there was just no future in it for his son, and that currach, we're hoping to acquire it as well, not too distant future. A fellow islander down in Clare Island was a man named Eddie O'Malley, and Eddie told me how in the 1960s there would have been 7 currachs with 2 men in each fishing lobsters from Portaculia, whereas that's where Michael Gallagher's standing there right now. Michael is probably the only man fishing out of that area now and checking his lobster pots. There was a good income to be made, I was told, in the 60s, where the fishermen again supplemented their income through farming and other practices, which Michael does himself. South of Clare Island lies Inishturk. Again, a similar story to Clare Island. Like generations before him, Mikey O'Toole, who you see here in the picture, sits in his house in Ballyhere, which is just above Portdoon Pier. It's a tiny pier on Turk, and he looks out across, an expansive water from the island to the mainland that was once teeming with all kinds of fishermen and all kinds of transport. It's the O'Toole name is synonymous with Inishturk. It's everyone. There's a lot of O'Tooles out there, and much of Mikey's life has been shaped by the island. His great-grandfather built the house which he and his wife Marianne raised a family, and they still live in. He followed in the footsteps of his great-grandfather, his grandfather and father, who all fished the waters around Inishturk. And today Mikey is the last fisherman based out of this small harbour here at Portdoon Pier. For a heavier load than the currach could manage, larger sailboats were used, and no other boat is more associated with County Galway, of course, than the Galway hooker. In this next clip, Colleen Ogo Hernon sails his family's Galway hooker, the Nora Beg, with her black sails into the Claddagh Quay.
Don't say tank. not saying thanks.
You look amazing. Thanks.
Thanks.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not funny. Like, I don't want to be there.
You're fucking confused.
I said I had. Thanks so much. Usually talk to the listening shark.
Every message.
Don't love me.
I can definitely already tell.
No, I'm really not.
Like your answers will suggest.
So Colleen Oak's father, who's also Colleen, is a master boat builder, and he's an expert on the history of the Galway boats. His work with the Galway Hooker Sailing Club in restoring and promoting the use of the hookers among a new generation is vital work in preserving these old work horses. At the Sailing Club's workhouse, which we're looking at here, the Galway docks, hookers are openly restored. Members of the public, I'm happy to say, are encouraged to attend and ask questions and, you know, maybe even take part in the work, the sanding and the bending of the panels and boards, etc. So here you're looking at Loving, which I went down to see being restored again a number of years ago. It's just getting its new planks on, and I see Colleen was down there at work. Was great to talk to him. I mean, he's a great man. Here he is himself. He's a long history with boats himself. He's very happy to share his knowledge. He's standing outside here beside another type of curragh, which is a wooden curragh, a curragh all which is called. And at a talk he gave down at the Galway Docklands Festival in the Claddagh. And I've been in contact with him, and I hope to get to him. I keep promising to call down to him to talk to him. He built his first boat himself when he was a teenager in his garden. It's a funny story. But very interesting man, great knowledge of boats, and I'll be talking to him shortly as well. Older archival material that documents the lives of our coastal and island communities is also being used in the gallery, but it's also been added to. In June 1968, museum curator John O'Sullivan and our photographer Brendan Doyle spent 8 days on the island of Inisheer documenting local man Mike Keneally as he built a 19.5-foot 3-man curragh, complete with mast and sail, for the museum. It was a commission. I visited Mikey's daughter Maura out on Inisheer, where she still lives, and she gave her recollection of the museum's visit and provided great information on her father and her mother's role in their small curragh building business. It was fantastic to go out and talk to Maura, because I brought out the files from 1968 where Mikey had been corresponding back and forward with the curator John O'Sullivan. And when I brought them out to show Maura, she actually said that handwriting in all of the letters was her mother's, even though it was being signed Mikey Keneally. So I was asking her, why would that be? And I had no idea the mother had taken part in any side of this business, but she said her mother would have been involved in all the correspondence with orders that were coming in from the Galway mainland and Clare. So the girls on the island, when Mikey was a young man, going back to the beginning of the Free State, the young lads were left school quite early to start fishing or to take up a trade, where the girls had stayed in, so their knowledge of reading and writing was traditionally better. So her mother had taken on the role of doing all the paperwork for the orders and writing back to and from to the museum. So I thought that was a fascinating thing, that she would have ordered all the timbers in and whatnot from McDonagh's in Galway City, and also helped in building the boats, I have to say. And we have nice pictures from Maura of her mother and father pulling the canvas and tarring the canvas over the boats. So it was great to even get that knowledge of her mother's involvement. In 1968, the museum employees who travelled to Inisheer, they travelled on the ferry, the Naveena, and it's a very famous boat that is now actually up in Dublin, and it's probably been taken apart already. The Naveena serviced the Aran Islands from the Galway mainland from 1958 to the late 1980s. It's important to the islanders was immense. It was their contact, their lifeline between the islands and the mainland. Objects, I tried to get objects from the Naveena, but they were very difficult to get. The boat is being cut up in the docks up in Dublin. But I was delighted to meet. We put a call out actually on our Irish heritage and social media for any information on the Naveena, especially objects. And I got a call from an elderly man called John Reck, who worked on the Naveena and its predecessor, the boat before it, the ferry before it, which is called the Dune. And in this clip, John tells of the difficulties there was with loading animals onto the ferry for Fair Day.
On fair days then, they would bring the cattle from the beach. Now they'd have them ready, because they'd have a rope, a belly rope right around them and a hook on top. And they'd have sometimes a lot of trouble getting the beasts out into the water. But they'd catch them by the head, horns, whatever, and they'd place their chins or whatever they like to call them at that time at the after ends of the curragh, and they would row out, and approaching the ship then, I would be on duty there, ready with the hook to attach it to the belly band of the and the winch, of course, would be operated by one of the crews. And they would winch him up, we'd swing him in, and he comes straight onto the deck. The bottom deck, that is, of course, they'll go down further. And they'd be all put in there. Now, some of them would be anxious, like as soon as their hose would touch the ground, you know, they'd make a dive and be very agitated, but they'd settle.
So you can tell there, John has since passed on, which makes it all the more important that we got that. I have a long interview with him sitting in his house. He was an absolute gentleman, and his wife, lovely as well. But John, that interview and more sections of it will feature in the gallery as well. It was phenomenal to get somebody who worked on the Naveena and also on the Dune before it. So I was delighted to get that. Through a series, through networks of enthusiasts, as I go along up and down the coast, everyone points me to somebody else and says, "You heard about this person, or you heard about this person, this guy's doing something, and this lady has archives and her father's footage and all kinds of stuff." It's fantastic. We have a great, very good network now of people up and down the West Coast. It was through one of those people, John Tynan, who was the secretary of the Cork-based rowing club, Naomh Kirky, that I got in touch with this gentleman in the image, Matty O'Malley, in East Galway, as far from the sea probably as you can nearly get. But Matty was busy in his timber yard in Woodford in County Galway, building a large nobby boat from a design and measurements of the Santa Maria nobby that was built in 1918 for the Clogherty business family of Roundstone in Galway. The Santa Maria was built by Bartley Clogherty of Inishni, County Galway. So he was building to those plans, which was really interesting, and he knows timber and he knows wood, and he's also a sailor as well, so he had a great appreciation for the work he was at. So he's obviously talented with wood, but I must get in contact with him again, and I've tried to already, just to see how far along this boat has come and has it hit the water yet. The nobby type boat itself was quite a large wooden boat, sailboat. The Congested Districts Board encouraged the use of the newly built Isle of Man type nobbies among the fishermen on the West Coast in 1891, and the Congested Districts Board were always trying to encourage fishermen on the West Coast to make more use of the resources, the fish that they had, the seasonal shoals that came in. The curraghs weren't big enough really to make most use of it, but of course, what was the problem? Material, timbers, fabrics, etc. were all costly, so loans had to be given out to fishermen. The use of the nobbies declined as a working boat, and like most sail-powered craft, it's rare to find an example now in good condition, and that makes Matty's work here all the more important. In 2021, John Tynan had invited me to row with a school group he was taking out on Lough Derg in County Clare. The school spent the full day rowing beautifully built West Clare curraghs on the lake. in some beautiful weather. A number of the boats were built by the Clare Kirk building brothers, James and Alan Madigan. And it took me some time, but I got to meet James Madigan last year in Kilrush Boatyard, where he works. And he showed me his current builds, and he talked about his own, his and his own family's history in boat building. They're a well-known boat building family.
Well, yeah, my grandfather. Yeah, my grandfather. He was the last Cork. He was the last sort of commercial Cork builder around here.
Is this the Blunney side of the family?
Blunnies, yeah. Sign of Blunney. He was the last of them, and he just down over there where the Dolphin Centre is now. That was actually his workshop.
Ah.
You know, but it was. Well, he built lots of Corks inside there. So fishing boats. It was the 3-mans and 2-mans, like along that style.
Yeah.
You know? And
And your own father built them, then yourself, was it?
Oh, no, my father didn't build them. My father was big into rowing now. He's actually an All-Ireland champion rower.
Right.
You know, so.
Wow.
But my father was my grandfather's side that was into the Cork building. But so like when I was a young fella, I was about 13, 14, 15. I spent summers with him.
So James agreed after talking to him, and he still builds boats as part of his job, but he agreed to build a Clare Kirk for the museum using the traditional techniques and skills passed on to him by his grandfather, who he had actually trained with in the grandfather's shed. And he might have mentioned there that there was actually no electricity or running water in the shed, and all tools were hand tools, and that's how he learned his trade. We actually got the boat, James's boat, only a few months ago, and that's going to feature very prominently in the gallery because it's a fantastic example of a Clare Kirk that we hadn't had up till then. Community engagement with groups and individuals in County Kerry has been exceptional. I have to say I'm real happy with some of the great information and resources we're getting from there. Bale Ages Kerry, the Kerry Folklore Group, donated a series of interviews it had carried out with boat builders from the county, and we have some fantastic, all the main family boat builders in that area were interviewed, and we have those interviews and we're full permission to use them as well, which was a great plus. A stunning to scale model of a Kerry fishing smack, which you see in the picture here, was donated to the museum as well. It was built and rigged by Cron O'Malley in Kerry in 1933. The smacks were used down in the Kerry coast in the early 20th century, and Crohan was well, I call him Cron, they have a different pronunciation down there from. He was a well-known and respected boatman and a member of the local coast life-saving service. And it's a great quality build. It's a fantastic built model boat, nearly 100 years old at this stage. And it's a great provenance, which is what we love about these. As I was saying from the start, it's about the people who built them and the stories that come with those boats.
The information.
Oh, beg your pardon. Let me go back one. In 2002, the National Museum chose to build a Belderrick Kirk. That's the type of Kirk I'd shown at the regatta earlier in this talk. They chose to build a Belderrick Kirk to be included in its collection, and the skilled boat builder Paul Godinin and his team from Mehalmara Community Boatyard in Cork were tasked with the job. I visited Mehalmara in Cork 2 or 3 years back, and had great conversations about their work and the team there, and looked back almost 20 years before to when the Belderrick Kirk was built on the grounds of Turlough Park. In this clip, Pádraig Godinin outlines to Seamus McPhilip what sources were studied when building the boat for the National Museum. And the audio isn't that great, so if you need to turn up, you can, please do.
The information we had on the Belderrick, if I can introduce Brendan, with beard there, and his father, Jim Shem on their Archin. Yeah, his father, who was the national school teacher in Belderrick, documented the type of product that was in Belderrick, which is in the book there that Brendan has recently published. That was one source of information. The other source I have, which I can show later, I don't have it in slide form, is we did a survey in 95 from about the Heritage Council, where we travelled all of the coast, documented the products through actual an extinct photograph in Newton. And we have some photographs here from Belderrick. And we purchased a wreck really of a park, which was reasonably intact, all bits missing from Belderrick, and we took that to Cork.
So that was Pádraig there explaining some of the, and the gent you heard there as well was Brendan, who I'd interviewed up in Belderrick as well a couple of years back. So the between communities, boat builders themselves, community boatyards like we're seeing here, or we see at the Galway Hooker Sailing Club as well. There's a lot of I suppose formal organisations as well that we have been in contact with and have great sources of information because they're all interested in the heritage of their own trade and what they love. There's only a few of them there that I'm looking at, and there's still great conversations between us and them. And anytime they see information or think of a new contact I should be talking, I'm always getting emails, which is really, it's exceptionally useful. It really is. It's driving on this work. Since we opened in 2001, we've always been doing our best to tie in with third level institutions, colleges and secondary schools as well. The collection we have is about 50,000 objects, not just on the boats, and really a lot of it hasn't been researched, and we're always trying to encourage anyone who's doing a thesis or dissertation to take on a section of the collection and maybe work on it. So here we're looking at just a couple of groups that I've brought in to the boats to give them a tour of the boats and explain what we're doing. And I'd say nearly every group we take in and bring through the boat gallery, somebody has a connection to a boat builder or a boat building family, or they have some information that they pass on. So it's a two-way relationship, and we all get something out of it. Just in terms of the gallery itself, and I haven't much more slides. I hope you can still hear me, and I'm not talking to myself here. But I just want to go in and show the actual gallery itself. So these are our plans. We have an organisation, a design team from London called Metaphor, who are designing the boat gallery for us. So we've explained what we want in it and what we can fit in it. We have, I think it's 8 boats, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 boats, some of them with sails, starting from the Donegal, we'll say, as you come in the door, you'll work right down the coast to Cork. And as we go down, it's not just the boats we're going to be looking at. We also have chosen themes that each region will deal with. So we see the Northwest region at the left door, you'll work down the coast, west, midwest, southwest, and each region will have a theme that I have picked up as being important to coastal and island communities. It could be tragedy, it could be tradition, identity, language, the importance of the Irish language, and they will all feature in the gallery as well. So this is the latest draft we're looking at. But again, as I said from the start, it's the boats are really the vehicles on which the stories of the community are going to be displayed. Here's just a side view. There's the boats kind of halfway up the wall, what you'll be looking at. On one side are the full-size boats. On the other side here, you'll have the model boats, and we have model boats for each region as well. Panels of information, interactives. So as you're walking down, you'll have both sides. There'll be something for all levels of interest. That's just a section of the model boat side. They'll all be cased off, of course. The fishing smack, we've a lovely model Galway hooker that was built out in Galway as well. We've some real old, there's a Kinsale hooker, which was built in the 1880s, a model of a Kinsale hooker. I think it's the only one. I haven't heard or seen of another one. So we're fortunate enough to have that. It'll be on display as well. If I can move to the next one. So my use of our Irish heritage is the blog I write on the traditional boats of Ireland's Wild Atlantic Way, and it's really just a way to update people on the development of the boat gallery, and also importantly put out calls for information. And it's been really useful for people coming back to me with information. I share my fieldwork and some of the desk research I'm doing on our own objects, and interactions we have with artists and poets and enthusiasts and academics, etc. And I'm getting as much information back from the public as well, who come back saying, they remember that boat or this person or their grandparents using it. So I'm sharing as much as I can get, and it's coming back, which is fantastic. But also, it's the work everyone else and the communities are putting into our Irish heritage that's also extremely useful, such as this article on the left post, which was Joe McGowan, and I'd been in touch with Joe anyways, writing about a particular post on the history of some Sligo maritime stories, and Joe's a great he was a great source of information and images. Oyster fishing and dredges. We have an oyster dredging boat from Galway, but it's too bad condition to go on display. So on our interactives, we will have what we hold, images and footage, etc. But this to come across another angle on the dredging story it's great to have, and that's on the site as well. I was down in Portmagee there during the summer at a festival on the Seine boat, and actually this thesis by Mary McGillicuddy, she was down there speaking, and I was talking to her. I knew of her thesis, but I got to see her and meet her down there as well. So it's lovely to see that up on the site. And same here with, I see the Galway Hooker Sailing Club. There was a post on that as well, and a great interview as well. Actually, I listened to it, and there's mention of the Loving and it being restored. I was down for the Loving and its launch and sailing as well. So it's lovely to see all that similar articles and the same contacts coming up time and time again. And I keep calling back into it to see what is new on our Irish heritage. So that's my speak, folks. If anyone wants to contact me, there's my email address, ncampbell@museum.ie. You can visit the blog or the posts to see what I'm putting up. And I'd really love any feedback from the communities involved in the website, because it really is, it's a community gallery, to be honest. There's very little I'm putting into it. I'm gathering all of this information, but it's the communities that are feeding it, and that's really as it should be. So thank you for staying with me. I'm going to stop sharing here.
Thanks, Noel. That's absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm your colleague in the museum, and you know, I'm learning something new about what the plans for the gallery and everything. And I might just kick off the questions, because I did want to ask you, with some of the stories and information on our Irish heritage, we have been contacted a few times by Curragh clubs in the US.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, is there any international dimension? Have you been in touch with any of those, or are you keeping it purely to the Irish communities?
Yeah, there's a big Curragh group in North America. So kind of as a courtesy, I just contacted them a number of years ago to say, look, this is what I'm doing. If you'd please share it with your members, and if any, because there's there are Irish born members as well who are over there for probably economic reasons, but they're from Galway or they're from Donegal. There's a big festival in Milwaukee, actually, that's Seamus McPhilip went over to it a few years ago. Massive Curragh festival. But yeah, I mean, there's enough to be doing, trying to get out to every island and headland. But I've put it out to them and other international groups to say, listen, if you want to feed into it and you have any information or contacts, please, by all means, come back to me. But we're not. We can mention that dimension at the end of this gallery. What I want is a section on, you've seen the objects, now go down the road and see them on the water, because they're going to be in the most unnatural setting they can be, up on a wall in a building. It's not where you'd expect to see them. We have a lot of the Metaphor Design Company have a lot of crafty ways, because I said one thing we need to get into this gallery is a sense of the sea, and I don't mean seagulls screeching in your ears, something subtle, but if they're in the most unnatural setting they can be, and there needs to be, so we actually have a nice kind of crafty lighting. Anyone who's on the West Coast knows that the weather changes like that. 1 minute it's sunny, the next minute it's rolling in on clouds coming in. But at the end of the gallery, there's going to be a section on, here are the groups involved, here's regattas that are involved, still running, because there's regattas up and down the coast every summer. They're not really advertised, they're more local events, but if you know where to go, they're fantastic. There's still boat builders, there's enthusiasts who love to, like the Galway Hooker Sailing Club, you know, advertise that and say, listen, if you're going through Turlough and you're on your way to Galway, go down to them, you know. There's always a Galway hooker tied up in the Claddagh Basin down there. So go down and see living history still. You know, if you're out in Clare Island, try and meet up with Michael Gallagher, you know, see what he does. He'll talk about his lobster fishing. So we have a big advantage in that these objects are still being used. They're more leisure now, but they're still being used. They're still being built. They're still being used. And they're still, you know, as I said, the real McCoys are still out there, the guys and the women who were building them and using them. And they're more than happy to talk about them. You could walk down to any... I was leaving Turk, and I think his name was Andrew O'Toole. He had spotted me and he was wondering what I was doing, the usual. And by the time I got down to leave to get the boat to head off again, I must have been talking to him for about half an hour. He just spotted me and I explained what I was doing. They're just delighted to talk about their areas, their own localities, their interests. And that's what I want at the end of that gallery, is to say, now that's only half your journey. Go off and get down to the coast, get down to these islands and, you know, live and breathe it yourselves.
I love that, Noel. Thanks. Deirdre, Siobhan, Helen, any comments, questions?
Hi, it's Helen here. Noel, that was absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed it. On a personal note, my late father, he was from the Claddagh. He used to own the Galway Hook at the St. Patrick. Dad bought her in the 50s when she'd basically in very bad condition, and he fully restored her. He was a boat builder. I have all the original photos. He took, luckily at the time, Dad took pictures of every stage of the restoration, and I'd be happy to share all those with the gallery if you wanted them. I've got all
it'd be fantastic.
She was destroyed in a storm in 2002, sadly, not far from where I am on Bear Island. But and look, my father died the same year, but I wrote down all his stories. They're not oral recording, but I have all written down the whole. He went, you know, talked through everything he did in the restoration project, and I say I have loads of photos. I'd be more than happy to share them with the gallery.
Oh, Helen, I'd love that. Thanks so much. One big plus we'll have is that you know, we're going to have 4 good size interactives along this gallery as well. So in galleries, I like less is more. I hate a clunky full gallery. So again, you want to see the boats. I want people to see the boats. But anyways, we will have it
up there next year. So I'd love to see someone. I'd love to. When do you hope to open it?
Yeah, well, I was given a date of mid-26, so that's what I keep hitting management with. That this is, you know, we'll be 25 years open in 2026, and you know, it's no secret there's been no work on the building since. So if we can't, you know, I'm there that long looking at that building unopened to the public on the top floor. It's prime real estate in terms of Turlough Park, so I want it open for the 25th anniversary. But there's no reason we can't get stories like your own onto an interactive like that.
Yeah, I'll send. I've got your email address, so I'll send on everything I have.
Please, yeah, at least make contact, and I'll have your details. And when I'm making the final calls on what goes on, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks. Siobhan or Deirdre?
Oh, just to jump in there, Noel, and thanks very, very much. Really enjoyed that talk. I love the sea and anything maritime, but I'm based in Sligo, and we were involved with the McCann when Rosa was taking the objects out of the McCann boatyard, and with Chris Dorr and Martin Morris in terms of the papers going to the county, the local studies collection in Sligo. But I'm aware that there's another boat that they built, McCann Brothers built later in life, where it was done as a kind of a peace project, as a cross-border community boat. They built, I think they built a Greencastle yawl, a double ender with a drop keel, but the photographs of them building it in the yard was very carefully captured by a person that I know of, and I've seen the photo albums, and with the two brothers there when they were in their heights, really, in terms of building at a later stage in life. They're just the most fantastic photographs of them in the shed, which I don't think we have any really
Yeah.
You'd have the odd snap, but you don't have that kind of, you know, men at work over
Yeah.
attractive. So I'll link you with that family, and it may be of interest to you. But brilliant talk, really
Yeah,
thoroughly
it's
enjoyed it.
thanks
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
The family are still in touch
And
with us.
Noel,
Yeah.
sorry, just to interrupt there, just to say Siobhan is the Heritage Officer for County Sligo. I don't know if you're
Great.
aware.
No, I
It
wasn't.
could be
No,
a
but
good contact for you.
I guarantee you I've emailed you at some stage about this because I'm pestering everyone. And so apologies if I didn't recognize your name, Sean.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, open door. Thanks very much, Noel.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. I mean, to have their boat in it itself, yeah, we went up at that time that we were acquiring it, and you know, you saw the boatyard yourself. Like there was, it was, you know, they knew where everything was. We'll put it that way. But one of the great, some of the lovely objects. I mean, it was just unreal. We were going into sheds out the back, and there was a full sail, and all the templates they had up on the tied to the rafters of, you know, templates from old boats where you didn't, all you had to do is cut, obviously it's a template, you cut your new transom of a yawl to what they had. So we took all of those. They're just, you know, some of those were like from timbers over 100 years old, boat types over 100 years old. It was unreal. We were very lucky to get that. But I think it's his niece, is it, who still has that is a guest house now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, the Barkers, Geraldine Barker and her husband.
Geraldine.
Yeah, they
So
actually redeveloped the site as a kind of a B&B, well, a posh B&B, I suppose. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'd met them at that Ross's Point talk. And they were very, you know, I had met them personally at the time. It was Rosa who was dealing with it, and Krista McCarthy. But they said anything we want. You know, they're more than happy to help. I thought that was really useful. And Christor has done a great report on it and what was in there as well. And there's no better man than him to have the details of the boats. And it's just a lovely example from that area. And like I said, it's not just, you know, it's not just money gold. The two boys were building boats for up and down the coast, right down to North Mayo. And so that's the thing with these, you know, while the gallery is in kind of regions, I was going to do it by county, but that doesn't make sense because the water doesn't stop. You know, at Sligo when you go into different water into Donegal, and all of these guys are fishing up and down the coast. So it's roughly done into regions because there are variations. But it's very fluid. That's a bit of a pun, but
Deirdre, have you anything you want to add? We'll finish up with you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks very much, Noel. That was a really lovely talk, and I particularly loved hearing the oral histories. And it seems that boat building is still alive and well, which is great. What do you think on that? It's not a dying art, hopefully.
No, not at all. It's the problem is it's all. It's not just me saying this. They build boats. Some boat builders are just building boats on request, but there's actually a money making side to this if people had the time. I mean, there's off seasons for farming, there's off seasons for fishing, and I know there's one particular man, I won't mention him, but he's trying to encourage boat builders to bring in tourists. So if you're on, say, Inish Turk, you build a kirk in a week with a tourist, but they take the boat. And actually Donald McPolin there, who I mentioned in Donegal, he's done this, and he's brought people up. Boats of his Austrian tourists have come over, built boats with him, took their boat back to Austria. A lady from Cork stopped up. She was going to Achill with her kirk, pulled into the museum to show it to me. She had made it, I think, with Donald as well, and her siblings, adult siblings, and they go up every summer to Achill, to their house up there, and go out on the boat that they built themselves, you know. And this is all obviously paid for.
Brilliant.
But and it keeps that skill alive as well. But there's money there to be made, and I mean it's second nature to a lot of these boat builders, and they'd be, you know, paid for it. And but the skills are there, and there's groups who are doing, you know, great work. Metal Mara, you know, the Kieran Oliver and Colin O'Hearn and the father and everything in Galway. They're just so enthusiastic about their particular boat, but boat building in general. And God, there's great will, you know, and I've seen it for the last 5 years, talking to people. I've so much information. The problem now is trying to sieve through that and get, you know, that'll be next year, which will be a bit of a headache because there's so much good stuff, but it's a great problem, isn't it? You know.
Well, no, well, we can always, you know, build a bit of a community archive on the iCAN website around the stuff that perhaps doesn't make it into the galleries.
And that's one thing we could talk about because I've built up such, and Seamus, it's not just me, the predecessors as well, have built up such a network of contacts in each area that we're now, even before the gallery is opened, we're getting a lot of members of the public, artists, boat builders, academics, everything coming to us going, this is my project, can you give me all the information you have on an Achill or whatever it is? And we're lucky that we have a lot of that. So there's, you know, it will be, I hope, a kind of a centre for traditional Irish boats, even if it's the West Coast to start with. But like you say, we have to have that housed somewhere. So yeah.
Well, it seems like it's going to be amazing, and there's huge potential all around it. So thanks a million for being with us this evening, Noel, and giving us an insight into not only the galleries but the research behind it. It really is fantastic. And Helen, Siobhan and Deirdre, thanks a million for spending this hour or so with us as well. Really appreciate it. So we'll say good evening. Thanks again, Noel. Enjoy the evening, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.